All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about how you can shift from perfectionism to productivity, coaching versus therapy, and tips for building a side hustle as a working professional by interviewing Olesya Luraschi, a Harvard trained leadership coach. Welcome to the Inner Creator with Peter Sue, a podcast focused on helping rising creators learn more about the art and business of being a creator. On top of sharing the external tools to help you build better videos, communities, and businesses, we want to share how to improve your inner game, your mindset, your confidence, and your emotional well-being. I'm your host, Peter Sue. I'm a former investment banker at Goldman Sachs and venture capitalist turned singer-songwriter turned content creator here in San Francisco. And today, our very special guest is my friend Olesya Luraschi. We met at Ali Abdal's YouTuber course and got paired up as accountability partners. I've learned so much from Olesya about psychology, therapy, motivation, um, neuroscience. And just to give you all a quick background on Olesya, she's a Harvard educated leadership coach who's coached hundreds of tech execs from companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon. And she specializes in using evidence-based psychology to help people strengthen their mindsets and get what they really want out of life. Olesya has made a lot of videos on YouTube and TikTok, with some of them getting as much as 800,000 views. And she's done all this while raising 3 kids. So Olesya, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I feel like I'm like a lot of people right now where I'm like kind of recovering from a cold. So if I'm a little bit raspy, my apologies.
Got it, got it. Well, let's
Yeah.
let's just kick it off with like a fun question. How when everyone sees therapists on TV like The Sopranos or Ted Lasso, and there's like a stereotypical therapist or coach, like how realistic is that?
So in those two examples, and I've seen both of those shows, and I love both of those shows, probably because there's therapists in the shows. I actually would think that they actually are fairly realistic. So, but they're very different kind of modalities. So they're different schools of thought in psychology. So, for example, the therapist or I think she's a psychologist in The Sopranos. I'm pretty sure she's a psychoanalyst. So that's very much like, she thinks that like childhood experience would have a lot to do with like how he's doing now, et cetera, et cetera. And even maybe some like parent-child relationships, which he kind of does have issues with that in the show. And then the therapist in Ted Lasso, I think is kind of more of a modern therapist, maybe even like cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mm.
something along those lines. It's obviously hard to tell in like just a show context, but if anyone's interested in seeing therapists like on TV, there's a really good show on Apple TV that I just started watching called Shrinking.
Hmm.
I think that's what it's called.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's basically like kind of a therapist that goes like off the rails and like starts like vigilante therapizing his clients. And it's like I feel like a lot of us in the industry feel like that like urge sometimes. Where we're just like, look, I'm gonna tell you what to do. But we don't.
Shrinking.
Yeah, very good show. It's like it's with the one actor that is in How I Met Your Mother, the tall one. I don't know if you've ever seen that show.
Oh, Marshall.
Yeah, it's with
Oh,
Marshall. Yeah, it's
oh,
so good.
he's the vigilante therapist.
Yes, it is so good. Highly recommended.
Oh my gosh. Wow. He went from corporate lawyer to vigilante. I could
I
kind of
think he
see that
does a
actually.
great job. And also the guy who plays Indiana Jones, isn't it?
Harrison Ford?
Yeah, yeah, he's the older therapist.
I can see that. He's a little more old school, and then Marshall's a little more like
Yep,
pent
yep.
up.
Yeah, very good show. Yeah.
All right,
You
shrinking.
you you heard it here first.
Yeah, kicking it off with a banger right there.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to check that out. Well, let's start from like the beginning of your whole journey to becoming like a leadership coach. Like, can you tell us just like a little bit the audience, like where you grew up, how was like what was your dream as a kid growing up?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I actually grew up in what was then the Soviet Union. and now is Ukraine. And I very much identify as Ukrainian. And so I grew up in this tiny, tiny village outside of Lviv, which is a city that nobody knew a few years ago, but now most people do know. And when I say tiny, I mean like we had dirt roads, we had no running water. I don't think I saw a car until like I was at least like 5, 6 maybe. No TV. Like I often tell people that I was once like reading the Little House on the Prairie series with my kids when they were about like 8, 9. And I started like super relating to the books because like I'm like, this is just like my childhood. When was this written? And like I found out that it was like written in like the 1800s or something.
There's like horses and like fire to
And
stay
I'm like,
warm.
I also had to go to the well to get water. And we also didn't have refrigeration. Yeah. So like I yeah, but in many ways it was like the happiest of childhoods. Um like I lived on a farm. We grew strawberries, we had animals. I had a pet chicken. Like it was very much like picturesque in that way, which I guess people might not associate with like a Soviet childhood. We obviously didn't have a lot, but also like I was completely unaware of how little we had because like everyone didn't have a lot. So like I only like gained that awareness when we moved to the United States when I was 7, where it's like you like have this like perception where like other people have more and you have less. Because I actually was exposed to zero media before the age of 7 because we didn't have TV.
Mm.
So like you just like you were kind of just exposed to what you saw, which is like these days I'm sure a lot of people can barely like imagine that because we live in this like social media world where we're like constantly comparing ourselves. But yeah, like the only people we could compare to ourselves was like the other family that had a horse, and we were too poor to afford a horse, and like that was like the big comparison.
Yeah, I remember seeing one of your newsletter posts like on or your blog post about just we don't there's like studies that show you only need like a certain amount of money to be happy.
Mhm.
I forget the number, like a
It
75K or
was like
something.
72K or something at the time of the study, but it's I mean inflation.
Yeah, and I think if you yeah, and if you live like in like the West Coast of the US, it's like even crazier or something. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean you're in the valley and I'm in Seattle, so like there might be some adjustment that's needed for these areas.
mm, mm, mm.
Mhm.
Well, can you tell us like I know you were in marketing for a long time and then you made the jump to go to grad school and study. You went to Harvard to study. Um I know that was like a big fork for you and I think a lot of our listeners, whether they're creators or they're in tech, they're like leaders, like these big hard life decisions are I think all of us face, whether it's like what niche to pick, which career track to pick, how to start a side hustle, like so, yeah, can you just walk us through how you made that decision, um, to study
Yeah.
psychology versus, like,
Of course,
going to
yeah, I
medical
actually
school? Yeah.
remember it really well, so I can definitely do that. Yeah, so I spent several years when I was younger, in the beginning of my career, working essentially in like tech marketing, and then I was in an agency, and it was fine. Like a lot of people tell me that like I was good at marketing, and I feel like it was interesting enough, and it wasn't like bad or anything, but I had this, like, sensation that, like, I didn't wanna die a marketer, which I feel like sounds really dark. But, like, I thought about, like, when my kids, like, read my obituary,
Mm.
like, that's just not what I want it to say. And, like, obviously here, like, my Ukrainianness is coming out in, like, the darkness, like, very, like, Dostoevskian mindset. Um, and yeah, like, so I was just like, what do I really want for the rest of my life? And I think that can actually be like a helpful activity for some people just to think like, what do you want your obituary to say? And like I realized that marketing did fulfill some of my interests, but it just wasn't enough. And like the part of marketing that I really enjoyed was like the human psychology aspect. And so like I knew I wanted to go back to school, but I actually didn't know what I should be studying in order to like fulfill that need. And so like I was actually very split between anthropology and psychology. And anthropology because I've always had this like crazy curiosity about like cultures because like I'm a third culture kid. Like I feel like you are as well. And
Mhm.
that's like if anyone doesn't know what that means, it basically means that you were raised in a certain culture, but then you grew up in a different culture. And so you don't actually really fit in either. Like I'm not Ukrainian enough for the Ukrainians, but I'm also not American enough for the Americans. And so like it's like the third culture that is you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've always found culture absolutely fascinating. But what I did was I went through like the course catalog of the graduate schools and I looked at the anthropology courses and it was like pottery making in like Mesopotamia. And I was like, no, like that sounds really great for somebody who might be interested in that. But like all of the courses were like so specific, like anthropologically, and like it wasn't really about like people like as
Mm.
much about like the human mind that I wanted to study. And then I went through and like looked at the psychology catalog and I was like, I want to take that, I want to take that. It was like literally every course I was like, I would be happy to take that, I would be happy to study this for the rest of my life. And like that's when like I realized that this was it for me. And like honestly like I would do this for free. Like it's just such a like a fit for me that like it's remarkable to me that like I didn't find it earlier. And I think it's kind of maybe some of the cultural perceptions around like psychology and therapy that maybe I had or like that some of us grow up with, that it doesn't feel like the correct career option. um I mean, I when I was younger, I definitely wanted to be a doctor.
Mhm.
And so that was like something that was like a huge ambition of mine, but it just like the medical system just wasn't a fit. Like the way that they thought wasn't a fit for me. Like the way they thought about people and the way people were treated in that profession. Like I just couldn't get past it.
Was
And
it more of a medical like a emotional or a intellectual kind of affirmation that this isn't a fit or this is a fit?
oh, everything for me is emotional.
Mm, mhm, mhm,
Like all my decisions are emotional. Like I don't know if you know this, but so for anyone that's listening, Peter also knows my husband. Like they've chatted a bit. So I don't know if we've mentioned this to you, but like me and Javier got engaged like Javier's my husband, like 3 months after we met.
Oh, it's 3 months because I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
you
yeah.
met at the I
Like,
think the retreat in
oh, hold
Mexico
on.
or
February. So February, March, April, May, June. So 5 months. My bad. Well, like 4.5 months. So yeah. And like that was the same. I was just like, this is my person. I have this like utter feeling of certainty. Like I'm good. I'm just gonna take the leap.
well, so I'm curious, like, because I know when we've, like, talked every week, it's like you're very intellectual, right? You love the neuroscience and all
Yeah.
the, like, theory behind the cognitive behavior and everything, like, how do you balance or integrate, like, knowing all the theory, but also going with your gut, your intuition, the emotional part, like, are those separate sometimes for you, or is it kind of, like, on the same wavelength? Like
I mean, I think it's hard to like verbalize your individual experience because I do know that a lot of people have very distinct experiences in this. So like some people can't like vocalize their thoughts. And some people like actually don't think in sentences. Some people think in like images, which is super interesting. But I'm someone that like very much is verbal. Like I very much think in sentences. And I don't know, like I have like I think a part of it is like this like stubbornness where it's like I feel like, you know, like I just feel like I'm right. And like I don't know if that's a good thing. But like I have this like stubbornness to me where it's like, you know what? This is what I want to do and I'm right. So screw you all.
Oh, it seems like you're really in tune with your intuition.
Oh no, but then I go do it and I'm full of self-doubt. And like we talk about this a lot. So for anyone that's not listening, Peter and I have remained accountability partners. And oftentimes we get together and just like create our like two-person support therapy group of like how hard it is to be a solopreneur.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And for anyone listening out there, if you have questions for Olesya, just feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them. So shout out to Lila, Live Joyfully Design, Creative Ties. Yeah. So with like, so can you just walk us through then, like how you, why did you decide to be a coach versus a therapist? Because you were studying psychology at
Mm.
Harvard. Like,
Yeah, so it was kind of like a serendipity thing, which I think is how things are often in life. I actually took the psychology of coaching at Harvard. Funny enough, when I signed up for the course, I thought it was going to be like sports coaching. So I was disabused of that notion. Like when I showed up the first day, I was like, oh, not that type of coaching. And for anyone that's maybe not familiar with coaching, so essentially, like when we talk about coaching in psychology, it's like a method of psychology that like a method like not of therapy but like a certain framework that we use to elicit behavior change, to encourage motivation, and to essentially seek like awareness in an individual. And what happens with the difference between psychology and coaching is that the kind of premise, or at least the premise that we have had, is that psychology or therapy is for healing and coaching is for growing. And so like with coaching, like we're very much focused, and just shout out to Carol Kaufman who said that. That's not my own quote. She's a very well established coach that a lot of people know. She actually just wrote a book, so if anyone's in the leadership space and wants an excellent leadership group book, she just released her own book. And so yeah, that's kind of the framework that we've kind of gone along for now. Obviously, it's not perfect,
mhm,
but that's the idea that coaching is for growing someone. It's for the high performance. It's for very much like what is the maybe limit of your own performance that you haven't even considered. We don't actually know the limit of human performance. We haven't like achieved that yet. Like, like what, like over 50 years ago, they didn't think that it was possible to run a 4-minute mile. And now like people are like, I heard at the local university here, University of Washington, that like almost like every like collegiate athlete in the last meet like ran a 4-minute mile. And it's just like crazy
crazy.
that they
Yeah.
didn't used to think that could happen. And so that's very much where like coaching is in the like high performance positive psychology phase. And so like back to my story where I walked into Harvard and like I walked in the coaching course, and it wasn't sports, which was fine actually, because it was something way more interesting to me. It was like the optimization of human potential, and it was about like dreaming really. And
Mm,
like I think like I've never seen people like be taught how to dream before. And I don't mean like sleep dreaming. I mean like dreaming, like setting goals. And like I would see my professor at the time, her name's Margaret Moore, another excellent coach. Um, she would do these demonstrations where she would have people like set this like 5-year vision, and it looked like magic almost, like to us, like, and I don't think it was just me, to all of us, she seemed almost like a magician. And so yeah, like I had got so much from that course. And then like I realized that she was one of the executives at this institute called the Institute of Coaching, which is at McLean Hospital, which is part of Harvard Medical School. And they were hiring someone to help them with their marketing and running their organization. And so I applied for that role. And then I got involved at the Institute of Coaching. And while I was finishing my degree, I worked with them, and I got exposed to this whole new world that I didn't know existed. And it just felt like a really good fit that integrated my career in like startup marketing and the tech world,
mhm.
and also with psychology. So now I get to work with individuals in tech who are seeking like higher performance.
Got it. Yeah. And just for the audience out there, like, I know it's like a lot of your clients are like VPs, directors at like Google, Microsoft, Amazon. Like and I know you've coached hundreds of these like tech leaders. Um, like can you just tell us like what are some like the top 3 traits out of these like hundreds of execs at some of the biggest tech companies in the world? Like, what are the top 3 traits that you've noticed that help them to be successful and to optimize their human potential?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think like one of the traits is that they're constantly looking to improve. And obviously I have a what we would call a self-selection bias. So like I'm an individual coach. So like some coaches like are like forced upon people by the organization. Because like sometimes like a leader is like a toxic leader and the organization's like, hey, you need coaching, like so that you're better to your employees. I'm not that type of coach. I'm an external coach. So everyone that comes to me has like chosen to pursue
Mm,
like coaching by
mm,
themselves, right? And so excuse me, sorry. And so it's a lot of individuals who are very growth focused. And so like I guess like what I would call it is like Carol Dweck's growth mindset,
mhm,
like that constant like perception that you can improve and that you should improve and that there is like a path to improvement. I think that's like a big factor in it, and just kind of like being like energized by that desire to improve. And so, like, another, I mean, yeah, I think another trait that I see in a lot of like my most successful clients is like this inherent desire to do work. Like they they want to do the work. Like they feel energized by the work and they are very hardworking.
mhm.
Like kind of being that process orientation where like you're not just doing strategic things, you're also like actually doing the work. And a third factor, what I found is is that they seek performance, like they seek high performance and achievement, not just in their role, but also in other avenues. And it's actually really important because when they're kind of coming against a wall in their career or maybe in their team, like which happens to everyone, like adversity
Yeah,
happens,
yeah.
right? They can actually utilize like maybe their sport to get that sense of accomplishment.
Oh, so when they hit a wall at like going for a promo in corporate,
Mhm.
they excel at like CrossFit, and then that's where they get
Yeah, yeah.
achievement.
I have
Mm,
clients that are like, they do martial arts. I have one that's an ultra runner, or like even like, I have certain clients that, are more artistic, like painting or writing a novel. So like, I do think that there is something to be said about having like a life in which you have more than one thing you're working on. And when one thing gets frustrating or like you just, might be stagnating or like you might just need to be utilizing patience, but that can be hard for high achievers. Like you put that down and then you seek your like sense of accomplishment from something else.
interesting. So it's if I summarize it, it'd be like growth mindset, hard work, and then seeking achievement from different areas of their life.
Mhm,
Well, for
mhm.
someone that's a high achiever, uh, not naming any names, but no, like for people that want to always be at peak potential, optimizing, and I'm definitely like, I feel like I'm like that a lot. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are. Just what's your advice for how to balance self improvement, constantly getting better, and self acceptance, and being like, all right, I'm good. Like I'm content, because sometimes I really struggle with that. I always feel like I'm constantly, if I'm driving to the groceries, I need to listen to a podcast that my therapist recommended to me instead of listening to music and relaxing. Or like when I come back, instead of Netflix, I'm like, oh, I should be listening to masterclass to pick up this course. Like, how do you balance that or integrate it?
Yeah, so I'll offer like two frameworks here. So the first one comes from the book called The Gap and the Gain, which I recommend to any entrepreneur because it's co-written by a very famous entrepreneur coach called Dan Sullivan. Essentially, the idea in the book is that most of us are measuring ourselves. So we're like right here, right? And we're measuring ourselves to what our ideal state is always. Like, so I'm like, I'm here, but my ideal in my mind is here. And basically, he says that we should not do that. because that will make us feel horrible and burnt out and actually less motivated. What he says is to, and that's what he calls the gap.
Hmm.
What we should be doing is like, we're still right here. He says we should measure backwards always. And that's the
Oh,
gain. So like think about like where you first started, like when you say had 0 YouTube subscribers, or maybe like 2, like, your brother and your mom or something. And like just think about like that gain that's been happening, and to utilize that in all projects. And so like what the mind will do is that it will always go to the gap. Like our minds are just gappy like that. Like they like to do that. And like the reason they like to do that is because it's literally part of our biology. Because if they didn't do that, like we probably would have stopped when we invented farming. Like once we had agriculture, there was very little reason for like humanity to progress. Like we do not need to go to Mars. Like once we can feed ourselves, like what's the point of progressing? But obviously, like a feature of the human mind is that it will always see the gap. It will always look for what's missing,
got
right?
it. So always focus on the gain, how far we've come. Like, yeah, because I'm trying to get monetized, as you know, and you need 4,000 watch hours. Today I checked, I had like 1,700, and
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I still have 2,300 watch hours. But then I scrolled back to like August, and I was like, oh, I was at like 700, and I was like, oh, I've made 1,000 watch hours since then. And and then when I think about like, yeah, even getting my first 22 subscribers, my first 50, my first 100, those are like a big deal. And then getting to 200, 400, 500, 800, it's been like a grind. Like, but when I focus on that and how much better I've become versus like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be like Matt Davella or those guys with 3 million subs. Like I feel really bad when I compare. So yeah, I'm definitely going to use that. Focus on the gain.
The gain. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of those people, like those really successful YouTubers, or really anyone that's successful, they talk a lot about how they wish they had enjoyed the journey more along the way. And that was like
Mm-hmm.
one of their biggest regrets, was that they were always in the gap and they like never even saw like, like the beautiful journey that it was to arrive at that success.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, how do we enjoy the journey? I know you mentioned it in one of your videos. Like, if you if you're like constantly desperate and urgent, like you're attracting bad energy. You don't like, but versus once you assume you've already accomplished your goal, you're way more relaxed, and then you draw people to you because they want to be around that energy. They help you achieve your goals. It becomes more realistic. Like, yeah. Any advice for how
Well,
to?
so
Yeah.
I mean, I think I need to caveat this because like I'm not like actually a big proponent of like pure positivity. I actually think that can be like psychologically detrimental. And I think a lot of the people that like focus too much on like positivity can actually have like ill effects to it.
Mm.
Which what I mean by that, that was very like psychology speak, apologies. Um, what I mean by that is that a lot of people like you can't really control how you feel sometimes. Like like you just have these kind of negative thoughts that keep coming to you, and you're just like, like I'm never going to get monetized, for your example. Like just it's not going to happen. It's just like there's too many watch hours. By the time I get monetized, it'll be too late, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, yeah, like I guess you could spend a lot of time like in therapy or like doing a lot of work trying to change those thoughts. But I think what happens is that like a lot of us create like an extra layer of pain for ourselves, in which we also create kind of like a shame for having those thoughts. So like not only do we feel demotivated and kind of discouraged because like we're focusing on the gap, but like I think an easier entry point might be in how we're perceiving ourselves in focusing on the gap or feeling demotivated. And so like this basically is like the idea of like a meta emotion. So
Mm.
it's like an emotion that you feel about an emotion. So
Mm.
let's say that I feel discouraged because I'm not monetized, right?
Hmm.
And so like I what typically the mind does and what people do is that then they'll feel also like ashamed that they're discouraged, because like people want to feel motivated and they want to feel happy and they want to feel like, like excited about their work, which is completely normal. Like we all want to feel positive emotions, but I mean, these difficult emotions of feeling discouraged and demotivated are often part of the entrepreneurial journey. And a lot of us are creating like a shame for feeling the difficult emotions that I think like if we were worked on like decreasing that shame, that would be the easiest thing to do than trying to like get ourselves to feel happy all the time or something, which I think might actually be impossible
Oh, so
without
it's
like very extreme like drug use,
so
which we do not encourage on this
I do not
podcast.
encourage that on the Henry Creator. Well, it's so it sounds like it's like accepting like, oh, I feel scared that I can't reach 4,000 watch hours and I'm so far off, and just be like, that
Yeah.
is fear. I'm ashamed that maybe I haven't reached it as fast as my friends. They're like, but it's like, okay, it's there, but I'm not gonna like beat myself up even more because of that.
Yeah, you don't have to make it mean something significant about yourself. Like in the journey of being an entrepreneur, like, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, just,
I'm going to spell it out like I do with my
okay.
kids, just in case. So, like, in the journey of being an entrepreneur, like, we're all going to feel like SHIT. Like, it's just going to happen because it's difficult. And the human mind just will produce difficult emotions in any scenario. Like even if you were like in the opposite scenario, like if you were working a corporate job or if you were doing something else, like the human mind, like we were talking about, like will seek the gap like in every scenario. And that's part of our software. Like it's just how it's like how it works. Because like without it, we would have never kept evolving and like creating these crazy things that we've created where like I can talk to you like from a completely different city and then like all of these people can watch us. And like, I mean, if you think about it, like it's really crazy. And like, you know, I was a child that like grew up without even like television. Like, why did we create all this stuff, right? Like, why did we have the urge to create all of this like fascinating technology? Like, why do we want to go to Mars? And the reason is because we're always seeing the gap. And entrepreneurs are extra good at seeing the gap. And that's why they're entrepreneurs.
Wait. So then I'm a little confused because I see when I try to focus on the gain, then it's harder for me to see where I can grow. So, but then if I focus too much on the gap, then I kind of don't see the gain and I like beat myself up a lot.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
your mind,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is your mind will focus on the gap naturally. You don't have to try for that. Like, we actually, it's basically, the psychology like term for this is negativity bias.
Hmm.
And the brain has a well-documented negativity bias. Like, there's nothing wrong with you if you keep like nitpicking at things and like, you know, kind of seeing like all the things you haven't done. And that's why like it's accepting that the mind will do that, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of accepting that like, you know, the mind will look for the gap and it'll make you feel horrible and you'll feel sometimes really exhausted in this entrepreneurial journey. But your job is also to shift to the gain without feeling ashamed that you were in the gap or without like making it mean that it's something has gone wrong. Because I think the issue is a lot of us are like in the gap and we're like, okay, I've had all of these thoughts and feelings about how I'm not succeeding. That must mean I'm not succeeding or I will never succeed.
Hmm. Hmm. But then, so what about, can you create a positive, like when is the gap good? Like, is it like, let's say if you have an aspirational goal, like, all right, I'm going to eat plant-based for the next month because I want to just feel great or fit into my suit for my sister's wedding or something. Like, is that healthy, or should you just let your brain automatically create the
Well,
lack
so
or
I
the,
think it's a learning experience for
yeah.
everyone, right? So like it's kind of like what you were mentioning earlier where you're like, "Oh, I should be listening to a podcast while I'm driving instead of listening to music." So like everyone has like this kind of aspirational tendency where they're like, "Okay, I'm currently listening to music, but I could be doing something even better," right? And
Mhm.
that's, you know, the gap. But like I think it's really like a self journey essentially to figure out like which one is actually good for you. Because I think for a lot of us, like we engage in too much like aspirational behavior sometimes as entrepreneurs, particularly. And often what I like people to think about is kind of establishing like a part of your mind or a part of yourself that acts almost like a protector,
Mm.
right? Like, do you have like a sensation of having like a protector in your identity?
No. I
No.
have a
Okay.
I have a, very angry Asian parent in my psyche that keeps pushing me into the gap. I don't have a protector in my mind. That'd be nice though. But like the self-soothing friend. I've tried that. It's a very like it's like a baby. I need to like let it grow
But
into
like,
an adult.
okay, do you ever feel angry? Like, do you ever feel like, yeah, so that's like kind of your protector. I mean, it's maybe not coming out in the way that you want, like, but oftentimes like resentment and anger are signs of the protector. So resentment is oftentimes like a really good clue that you're not meeting your own needs
Mm,
and you're seeing someone else
mm,
meet their needs,
mm.
right? Or like you're seeing someone else get something that you need.
Got it.
You know, like
So it's
sometimes we get
mhm.
like really resentful of like people that are resting. You're just like, God, like stop
Yeah.
resting. So
Yeah.
annoying. I'm
The
here
jealousy,
putting the
insecurity.
dishes away.
Yeah. Why are you so awesome? Like,
Yeah. Or like they're like going on vacation or something and they're like just like, not thinking about their business or whatever and you're like, "Oh, so annoying."
yeah, living a balanced life.
Yeah.
Well, like on that note, like, and I know you coach a lot of people through this too. They've been on the career ladder, the corporate ladder, climbing it, or they're entrepreneurs. Like, and even just with creating your own content, like a lot of us, we get burnt out. I
Mm.
feel like I'm constantly optimizing, and then I burn out, and then I yo-yo back, and I burn out. Like, any advice on how to recognize when you're burnt out, and then what you can do to let it go and get back into your whole like your just get back in your element?
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, so this is actually something that I've struggled with a little bit in the past few weeks. Like I said, I got hit by like whatever virus is circulating around right now, and just like kind of doing more, and sometimes the stars align, and you just get like a little burnt out, and so it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. And like, I know you're going to share the burnout assessment that I shared with you. So there's actually a
Yep.
very well validated burnout assessment. And I think burnout is very prevalent. And this like sprint burnout cycle that you're talking about is extremely common. And I think what it is that a lot of it is that we just can't seem to accept our humanity. Like, and this is what I mean by this. Like, we have like a biology that works with certain rules and it only works in certain ways. And it's really was built for a certain environment, which is not really this environment. Like it was not this environment.
Mhm, mhm.
And a lot of us like haven't really been like, I guess, taught or even considered that we need to play by these rules. Otherwise, we're going to get burnt out. And so like what I like kind of the way I frame this for my clients is that like essentially we all need to kind of mourn the loss of like this superhuman identity.
Mm.
Because I think a lot of us do, or maybe we were sold, maybe we developed this concept that like we're almost like superhuman and anything's possible, which is like a beautiful idea, but it's completely unscientific, unfortunately. And I mean, I wish I was superhuman too, but like we're just not. Like we have very concrete limitations, even though like we're constantly pushing those limitations and people do overcome them, which is like amazing and aspirational. We do also need to respect that the mind and the body will revolt if pushed too hard. And one way to consider this that can be helpful is like for anyone that watches like Formula One or whatever, like when they have, like Ferraris going around the track, right? And they're like, some of the most impressive driving machines in the world. Like they're stopping all the time and changing their tires. And they have like this crew of like 8 people swarming the car, and they're like giving it all of this like,
Yeah.
replenishment. And it's like, this is supposed to be like a really impressive vehicle, but it has to keep taking pit stops. Otherwise it'll like fall apart. And like that's how our bodies are too, and our minds. Like it's an impressive vehicle, it's an impressive vehicle for our souls, but like it needs pit stops all of the time, and it like needs all of this stuff, and none of us are okay with coming to terms with like all of the things that our minds and bodies need.
Well, because my question, like that makes me think of the question of like, is it we need to lower our ambitions because sometimes we're trying to shoot for like Pluto's like eighth moon,
Mm.
or is it like you just need to go to Pluto's eighth moon, but you just need to take breaks, take care of yourself along the
Yeah,
way.
so the research indicates that it's the latter. So
Hmm.
it seems that like even like small breaks are very replenishing, like micro breaks, things like that. Um and like this is kind of some work from Richard Bogatis, but essentially, like I think what happens for a lot of us is we have almost like an over optimism and how much we can get done without taking breaks. But at the same time, we also like have a very poor like sensation of like how we feel. Like we're not really checking in enough.
Hmm.
We kind of sometimes like ignore like the signs. And I think if we were to what we would call like become like more emotionally intelligent, we would be better at like problem solving. So the one of the most famous like emotional researchers is called Mark Brackett from Yale. He has a book if you want to read it. But essentially, like one of his insights is that when we become more specific in identifying our emotions, we actually become much better at problem solving them. Right. So
Hmm.
like, because a lot of what the research indicates is that most people can only name 4 emotions. Do you know which ones they are?
Happy, sad, angry, scared.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pretty
Okay.
much. Yeah. So there you go. Well done. And like that's a problem actually, because if I'm thinking that I'm, sad, but I'm actually nostalgic, those are 2 completely different like
Yeah.
problem. Like they're completely different problems. Like the way that I would solve sadness or the way that I would solve loneliness is completely different than how I would solve grief. And so, like, if we become more granular in identifying our emotions, then we would actually know what we need for
Ah.
those like small breaks. So then we wouldn't burn out.
So it's instead of like I feel fatigued and I want to take a nap, it's like I feel anxious because my boss gave me this huge project and I've been
Mhm.
procrastinating and I don't want to like mess up the numbers or something. And that, or like and
Yeah.
you can go even deeper. And it's like, it's maybe because I'm putting my self-worth on the line. And so I feel like a sense of like fight or flight because it's literally my identity on the line from this little like deadline.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's so many things like to gain awareness of, like, and also like on top of this, like we often project. So we'll be like in an emotional state, and instead of really like coming to terms or understanding the emotional state, we'll like make up a story about it that involves another person. Usually. So a lot of
Mm.
times this happens with partners.
Oh,
It's
like
like,
what not doing the dishes means for like how someone cares about you or doesn't like it's kind of that.
yeah, yeah, it can be like, I mean, it can be really anything. A lot of individuals will try to control someone else
Mm.
instead of finding a way to identify their fear of lack of control over their own bodies, over their own lives, over their own success of their businesses.
Mm. Mm.
And like something like a little bit depressing that I found like in my like TikTok research. Because I had like one video that did really well, and I was like, I wonder why this was the one. Like, why this?
Yeah, yeah. The
Um,
800K viral one. Yeah.
yeah, it's like up to like 1.7 million now. I'm like,
Oh,
what
it
is
doubled in
happening?
like a week. That's
I'm like,
crazy.
who is watching this? Tell me names. Um, I'm like, I didn't understand why that one, because the other ones are like, you know, nobody watches them.
Yeah,
It's
I have
like
shorts
you,
like that
me,
for
you,
sure.
me, and Javier. um, and like what I found is that like it was very much focused on like motivating someone else. And so what I did was I looked at like the psychology hashtag on TikTok and like those types of things. And it seems like most of the psychology videos on TikTok that do really well are about changing someone else's psychology, motivating somebody else. It's very like, I'm going to control you focused. Like,
Mm,
how to make someone like you, how to
mm.
motivate someone else, how to XYZ, right? And like, I mean, I don't love that.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I guess it makes sense. People are interested in it, but I do think it's a form of projection where it's like, I feel like, maybe like I'm unhappy with something in myself. And so I'm gonna like,
I can't control myself, so I'll control someone else.
yeah, I mean, it's a tale as old as time.
Wow, 1.7 million is crazy because I thought 800K was a lot.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know why TikTok keeps pushing this out, but okay. I don't know how to replicate this.
Got it. Well,
Yeah.
quick transition to like an audience question. It's kind of related. This one's on perfectionism.
Mhm.
Um, so Azul, also P2I, he asks, so basically people suggest I give myself a certain amount of time to get a task done and just hit publish with what I have. But when the time's up, it seems like what I have is garbage. I like to polish until I'm proud of what I have. Would Apple be the most valuable company in the world if Steve Jobs didn't polish to absolute perfection? So, any suggestions on helping people like me decide when the project at hand merits what a 100 quality sandpaper, so fine, or a 24, which is like more rough, like when it's good enough?
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a common like dichotomy, and I think it's a lot more complex than people maybe sometimes give it credit for. Um, I think what might be a more interesting question is, are you able to hit publish when it isn't what you would consider perfect?
That's really hard. I know for me, yeah, that's hard.
Because I think like for me, a lot of the things I work with my clients on is essentially like decreasing rigidity. And like there was a famous psychologist that once said that like rigidity is the root cause of all mental illness. And what I mean by this is that essentially like we want you to have choices in your life. Like we want you to have the full like spectrum of behavior open to you, because it's almost like if you think of behaviors like tools, like you need to be able to pick up different tools in different moments. So there's going to be moments in your career that maybe you want to focus on that like small detail, and there's going to be some moments in your career where you just want to like quantity, like you want to just put out as much quantity as possible, right? And so like I want you to be able to be have the capacity to publish even when you're in the emotional state of this is not perfect. And so like I would want you to test it, and I would want you to publish it and see if you can, because a lot of people actually can't, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I've ever published a video I didn't feel good about. I've published bad shorts for sure. Like those are
Yeah,
really bad, but some of them,
so have I. All
but
my
a
shorts
lot,
are bad.
but a lot,
Only
to
100% bad shorts
be
over here.
humble, except for the 1.7 million.
No,
And
I thought that one was bad
that's
too. I was like, who
crazy.
is watching this? This is
That's
horrible.
encouraging. Okay.
I think
So,
like you film it on a whim, like in like 30 seconds between clients, and you're like, what?
yeah, see, I want to get to that state where I like what Ollie does. He just like does a script in 10 minutes with bullets and then talks. And then like
But
his
he didn't
videos
start
done.
out that way. If you like listen to like him talk about how he used to be, like he used to spend more time, no?
Oh, really? Oh,
Didn't he?
I know he said he's spent 5 to 10 hours a week on his channel since he started.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I do think that there is like this like idea of like holding your goals loosely, where it's like, I feel like success is very much about like wanting something, but also like not caring. And like for me, that's been like the magic equation for like life and burnout prevention.
Got it. So holding goals loosely. So like set the ambition, but then don't get so attached to it. Okay. Well, no, I'll try to use that. Try to just hit publish on a bad
Like,
video. And
because like
another,
really like what do you want? Like what I think it would be really important for people to like be really clear on like what they actually need in their lives. Like, do you know what I mean? Like most of us like only really truly care about like maybe three things. Like truly, truly, like when it comes down to it. Like if there was an apocalypse and like, you know, someone asked you like what would matter to you.
got it. So like if because I think a lot of my perfectionism, and I think maybe a lot of creators, it's like a lot of times people attach their self-worth to the output and the videos, the views, the quality of the product. Like maybe I and other people we can get that need met in a different way without having to get that validated
Well,
with
I mean,
views.
in my perception, like self-worth is inherent. Like you can't like increase it. Like
Mm,
people just have their worth and like there's a worth to every human
hmm.
life. Like we have all kinds of laws to protect it, right? And like I think it's a very like tricky equation to be playing to like say that this increases human worth in some way or another. Like if you really think about it super logically, it's actually really illogical.
Yeah. I agree. It doesn't make sense intellectually, but like I know for me, I think I probably confuse self-worth with like self-confidence and like self-acceptance and all these. I so I think I know the challenge I have is I my self-worth is variable and it's sometimes tied to external stuff, which is something I'm working
I
on.
think that's normal. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I think it is a huge fallacy to think that once you're successful, your self-worth will increase.
Mm,
Your
mm.
self-worth will not increase. Trust me.
Yeah.
Like I work with a lot of successful people.
Well, see, that's interesting because I feel like when I've done successful
Oh,
stuff, like
it will increase for a little while,
yeah,
like
but it
for a
doesn't
bit.
it
Yeah.
hits the hedonic thing,
You'll have
right?
like a bump. Yeah. And then
Well,
like give it a few days and then you'll be like, "Wait a second."
yeah. Then you're back to the fill it by burning out phase. Well,
Yeah.
I'll try that. I'll try that. Like detach from the goals a little bit, hold them loosely. Another topic before we wrap up is for starting a side hustle. I know you coach a lot of your clients. They're like directors, VPs in these big tech companies, and they want to do something creative. And maybe make a side hustle. Like any advice? I know you've talked about some people get stuck for whatever reason. Can you
Mhm.
just kind of give the audience like a little advice on how they could get unstuck, what they should focus on when starting a side hustle?
Yeah, I think like if you just visualize like, you know, like when you see those videos of the people cliff diving, that's essentially going to be you in the beginning of the side hustle. Like you're just going to be leaping into like thin air, not knowing like what's under there or like whatever ocean, whatever. Like it's really going to be a journey to become comfortable with ambiguity because for a lot of us, like we were raised in school systems that had very clear rules. This is how you get an A, and lot of large organizations remain that way, where it's like if you do X, Y, and Z, then you get promoted to this position and you get this much more money. If you do, you know, ABC, you then get this and this and this. And with side hustles and with entrepreneurship, like it's basically diving into the abyss and basically like just forming this relationship with ambiguity that you never had before because you never really had to. And for a lot of us, that's really terrifying because we're like, okay, I want to do this, but I have no idea what like the roadmap is. I have no idea how. And a lot of people get stuck on the how. And what I often tell people is that you're actually not going to know the how of how you succeed until literally the very millisecond that you succeed.
I like that.
Until
I
then,
like that.
the how will be a very big mystery.
I like that.
And so you just have to like show up. You have to like, what I have some of my clients do is just like set a 10-minute timer, like think of like as many ideas as you can of how you could possibly have done it. Like imagine that you did it
Mm.
and then just like, hypothesize.
Hmm.
Like, and these hypotheses are going to be your roadmap because there is no roadmap. This isn't, like high school where, to ace AP calculus, you need to do these things. This is the complete unknown. And you're just going to have to think of ideas, go execute them, fail, come back, do it again until the moment that one of them works and you succeed. And then you'll know how. And then you'll create all kinds of content showing people how, and they'll try to replicate you and they probably won't have the same results because people are incredibly variable.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, you don't know how till the very millisecond before you succeed. Well, in wrapping up, so got a couple of rapid fire questions for you. So, what's your favorite piece of gear that you use for YouTube?
Oh, for YouTube. Shoot, like I have a fancy setup that I never use because I've gone completely on shorts. So my favorite piece of gear is like my old iPhone XR.
Nice, nice, very streamlined. I like it. Favorite book that you've read in 2022,
In 2022, not 23. Shoot. Mm, I might
or
cheat and have
it could be
okay.
trailing 12 months, like so it could
Okay.
include this month.
So I recently read Solito. It's Solito. It's an autobiography of a 9-year-old boy from El Salvador who illegally immigrates into the United States. And it is like one of the best books I wish I've written it, that I've read recently. Just the perspective. I actually think like these types of books can be really healing for people who are doing hard things, like, like
Mm,
they're striking out on their own. And at least for me, it's very like perspective broadening, especially when I'm going through something hard. So like when I read it, I was actually doing something difficult in my business. And I actually found so much comfort in like how much hardship like a human can endure, even at that age,
mm.
and like still come out of it. Like, and this is a true story. And
Oh
he ended
wow.
up going to like Harvard and I think MIT. Like I might be wrong on the particular Ivy League schools,
Yeah, but yeah,
but this child like went through so much trauma and he persevered and it was like amazing. And I love it. I can't recommend it enough.
that sounds super inspiring.
Mhm.
Favorite course you took in the last 12 months?
Course. Wow. 12 months. I took like a business course for like outreach and marketing, specifically for coaches. If anyone wants the information, I can give it to you later. But yeah, it's
Okay,
very like specific. Yeah, but it
cool.
was good.
If you could jump into a time machine and go to any time and place for 30 minutes, who would you talk to?
Oh wow, that's a good one. Um, I think I would go back to when my grandparents were like closer to my age. My grandparents have a very like difficult history. They went to a work camp in Siberia when they were just teenagers.
Oh wow.
And so they spent a long time there. They actually gave birth to their first child there. And so I would go talk to them. Like I would go to Siberia in the Soviet Union and I would talk to them because I think they would offer so much perspective and wisdom. And like growing up, my grandmother was very important to me. And like I never got to, she's no longer with us. And so
Mhm.
like I never got to ask her like as like a grown woman what that was like.
Got it. Got it. And assuming your family's safe and your house is like burning down, like what three things would you go in and grab first?
Whew. Shoot. Okay. I would obviously go and grab like my kids like favorite little possessions. Like they all have like blinkies and stuffed animals that are very nostalgic. And like honestly, like I think I've gotten attached to them too because they're like these representations of their
Mm,
childhood.
mm,
And so that's what I would be grabbing. Cause also if I didn't, there would be a lot of like emotional turmoil for me to deal with. Yeah.
Nice. And then, what's one of the best decisions you've made in your life and why?
Oh, yeah, marrying Javier, my 4.5 month engagement.
Nice. And, favorite quote?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm gonna butcher this, but it's by John Milton from Paradise Lost. It goes something like, "Your mind can be a heaven or a hell. You are the one who makes it so."
Oh, yeah, I saw that in your blog post. So, yeah, I really like that quote.
I love it. It just struck me.
And for a takeaway for the audience, for someone who's listening out there right now, like, what's the one thing you hope that they take away from our conversation today?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they take away that, really it's so crucial for you to, like, treat yourself with, like, a form of self-compassion in this entrepreneurial journey, because it's so common to feel like you're not good enough, you're not gonna make it, the stuff you're creating isn't good enough, um, and, like, to realize that that's not, like, a reflection of you, that's just part of the journey. It's like those are, like, those feelings, those thoughts are, like, the ticket to ride this journey, and we all have them, we all go through them, and they're just a part of what it is to grow into this, like, version of yourself, but it doesn't mean that you're failing or you're gonna be a failure or anything like that.
Mm, definitely going to think about that more. And just to like wrap things up, like what's I know you do a lot of coaching, especially with tech leaders, and you have a group mastermind. You have your blog, your newsletter, your YouTube channel. Like if someone wants to learn more about your work, maybe even be coached by you, like what's the best way for them to like what yeah, to learn more about what you're
Yeah,
doing?
I mean, you can just type my name, go www.olesyaluraschi.com. I'm the only person with this name on earth. Um, so so easy to find. And, yeah, I'm, like, on YouTube, TikTok. I send, like, a Monday motivation newsletter that you can sign up for right in the on my website. That might be really useful to you even if you're, like, not in the tech space. And yeah, if you want to like book an intro session, you can do so right there on my website as well. If you're someone that's looking for coaching, I'd be happy to chat with you. And yeah, like just if even if you have a question, like shoot me a message on one of those platforms. I'm always happy to answer questions or help you all in any way I can. Like I know that these journeys can be difficult, so I'd love to like just lend like whatever small helping hand I can.
Awesome. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening to the Inner Creator with Peter Sue with our special guest Olesya Luraschi today. Thanks everyone for listening, everyone that tuned in, and thank you, Olesya. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Peter. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you.